Okay, so I reacted to the recent news of Chicago being flooded with Venezuelan gangs. And of course, I talked about Aurora, Colorado and the origin of this. However, I didn't really discuss the reasons why they have been allowed to operate in these cities.
Be a reason. There has to be a goal from the powers that be, from the government, from Biden, Harris, from Mayorkas, that little rat. They're letting these people come in. Besides the terrorists and all that crap, the Venezuelan president emptied out the jails. All these people are coming in, and they're not doing nothing about it. What's the purpose? What are they trying to make a civil war? Are they trying to make it just burn down to where the government has to take over? What? I'm just trying to figure it out. It's not a humanitarian thing. It's not, well, we feel bad for these freaking poor Venezuelan gangster murderers. What's the point? I'm trying to figure out. And everybody's silent.
Well, don't worry. We will be seeing, we'll be answering the question if Vinny's fear is legitimate. However, I'm also going to be talking about why it is this plan the Democrats have is, for the most part, flawed, but also quite sinister too. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. If you guys didn't see it on Thursday, don't worry, the video will be linked in the description box, but I decided to react to the New York Post article that recently just dropped in the 7-minute long video segment, of which, by the way, they decided to throw a copyright claim in on the re-upload or the redone version of that video. Don't worry, that video is not coming down. But of course, like I said, it'll be linked in the description box on the situation in Chicago with the Venezuelan gangs, the armed Venezuelan gangs, the same armed Venezuelan gangs or the same or extension of what's going on in Aurora, Colorado. Now, guys, I've talked about this for a while. I've talked about the migrant crisis. I've talked about the border crisis at large in several videos and how it is that they're just pouring more and more migrants into this country. And we've talked about the reasons why that's the case, whether it be political for votes or anything else. However, I'm here to tell you guys right now that there's probably another reason behind this that I don't think too many people have thought about, but of course I have actually mentioned in this video before. And it goes to the whole topic of jealousy and how it is that the idea behind this is, in fact, to create crime and, in fact, designed to create tension. Also, there is this possibility of Kamala Harris becoming president, getting elected, and, of course, being able to, let's just say, do exactly what she said in this segment from her one-on-one interview with Stephanie Rule.
And that's part of what needs to be addressed. And my pledge is that when elected president, if the American people will have me, I will bring that bill back and I will sign it into law. And we need a comprehensive plan that includes what we need to do to fortify not only our border, but deal with the fact that we also need to create pathways for people to earn citizenship.
Which is actually completely unrealistic if Republicans take back the Senate, which they more than likely will. Now, guys, there's going to be a lot in this video. We're going to talk about the sinister purpose behind this gang invasion, which, of course, is being allowed to occur. Talk about the gang portion of the migrants. And also something else, too, the political situation. And the reason why I'm talking about the political situation is because we obviously have to talk about that topic of one-party rule again and why it is that it's actually really flawed. However, it's still good to talk about because, yes, this is what the Democratic Party is trying to do with the Hispanics coming across the border. However, once again, though, we need to kind of revisit this situation and talk about why it is that it's actually a flawed technique that will actually create other problems outside the political realm, but let us go ahead and get to it. You guys saw in the B-roll footage, you guys saw some stuff from the New York Post video that I talked about earlier. However, one of the leaders, the ex-cons for Trump leader, he went on Fox News a couple of days ago. He voiced his concerns about this, and let's just go ahead and say that by the time you guys get to the end of this segment, you would probably think that there's a political awakening in South Chicago.
And now the influx of it is, which is oxymoronic at the same time. Now we have to fight transnational gangs and the influx of these men who we don't know where they come, what crimes they committed, and the violence that they've been involved with thus far. With that being said, we're on the front line every day, making sure that our communities are safe. And it's really not about the black community. This is just the beginning, because violence anywhere is violence everywhere. America should be afraid that this can happen in American cities, one of the biggest cities, one of the biggest tourist attracting cities in the country, that we can watch this happen all over the country and not be. We should be first. Put us first. And the very notion that anyone would have the audacity to think that non-citizens should go before the black community and the most impoverished communities is asinine.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a slap in the face. So so that's the first part of this problem. The second part.
Okay, so you guys obviously seen that. You obviously heard that. People in the city of Chicago are obviously waking up. We've talked about this for the better part of a year and a half now, talking about the benefits that's been given out to the migrants from the federal government, and of course, to go on top of that, also from the city of Chicago itself. Which brings us back to the Patrick Bet David podcast, that even PBD himself even brought up exactly how much money had been spent on the migrants in the city of Chicago. Let me roll this.
They've been in, they're like the major leagues. Yeah. They're like Olympic level. We're collegiate level gang here. This is like Olympic athletes.
Let me read this
come
to
in
you.
here.
Let me read this to you so people realize what the numbers are. The city has spent nearly $500 million. The city, not the government, not the state, the city has spent nearly $500 million on 42,000 migrants since 2022, with reports of Venezuelan gangs infiltrating neighborhoods, committing crimes, and clashing with entrenched black gangs. So again, let me give the number. In 2 years, city has spent $500 million. $500 million. A city, not a state, not the federal government. City has spent $500 million on 42,000 migrants who have been here last 2 years.
Okay, Pat. Please try to make someone understand. Like, the border open, and they're bringing these people.
Now, like I said, there's a lot to get to in this video, and I'm going to try to be as quick and concise as possible. So why in the world are the migrants here? Well, obviously the migrants are here because the migrants are new votes for the Democratic Party. The black population is shrinking in overall size, and I've talked about this before, that there isn't really WRT, it's actually BRT. I'll let you guys kind of fill in the acronym, but still though, when you look at the fact that one particular race in this country has an extremely high abortion rate, also has an extremely high death rate, extremely high obesity rate, especially amongst women, STD rate, and of course there's also the B on B murder rate and the crime rate and the incarceration rates, it seems to me like an entire generation of said race could be wiped out, and that right there is obviously a sad, not good thing. But the worst part about it is that these people have been on the Democratic Party plantation for so long, they keep voting for the people who continue to systematically destroy them. Roughly half this nation's black population lives in the inner cities of America, the largest inner cities of America, where the other half typically tend to live in the southeastern United States, or at least south of the Mason-Dixon line, and you could probably say from Delaware all the way down to Florida, all the way out to Texas. But the fact of the matter is this right here. Obviously, there has been a certain population in this country that has, in fact, in the process of being replaced. Now, why the gangs? Well, I want you to think about something really quick. I'm going to answer that with a scenario, and we'll get right back to the reaction portion of this video and expand a little bit further. But I want you to think about something really quick. Today is September the 26th. This video comes out on September the 27th. Election day is on November the 5th. The new administration would not take power until January the 20th. And of course, within the first 3 days of being in office, the new president would have to sign a bunch of executive orders, if that's Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, I don't think, is going to do anything except continue the disastrous Biden policies. However, in between September the 27th to January the 20th, the current regime would still obviously be in power. The city of Chicago has an extremely weak mayor in Brandon Johnson, who quite frankly is pro-immigrant, and of course he hoodwinked the hell out of the black community. You have J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, who's still going to be governor for 2 more years, but understands that any slip-up on the Democratic Party right now could be bad for Kamala Harris. And of course, it's also possible that he has presidential ambitions himself, so we never know. We don't really know. He would be less inclined to want to send the National Guard in, is my thinking at this moment in time, if something bad was to happen in the city of Chicago. And of course, to go on top of that, the current president of the United States has got to find a way to get this VP elected, because Joe's still loyal to the party, even though he's been throwing some winks and some nods out here with wearing Trump hats and stuff like that there. But still, though, the point is this right here. The Democratic Party and the mainstream media does not want any additional slip-ups to occur, nor do they want an incident like, say, possibly armed Venezuelan gangs getting into it with Chicago gangs, which happen to be primarily black men ahead of the election. I could already see the mainstream media reporting on this, that the black gangs get into it with the Venezuelan gangs, and they talk about what's going on there and how it is that Venezuelans are getting much more benefits ahead of them. I can already hear these people talking about saying it's misinformation or possibly even calling the black men in the gangs racist because they got into it with the Venezuelan migrants. Basically, what I'm saying is that the situation could, in fact, get nasty ahead of Election Day, and the current regime is not going to want to do anything. They're not going to want to step in there, and they're not going to want any more bad press for somebody who is actually not getting a good early vote total, as you guys are seeing if you pause the video and look at the B-roll footage in the state of Virginia, of all places, a Democrat state. Kamala Harris may be up in a lot of these polls, but she's also down a lot of these polls. And of course, the early vote totals, the early vote requests, mail-in requests from states like, say, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, my home state, Georgia, and all these other states are showing you that she's not doing very well when it comes to early vote. This right here is a woman who's looking at getting her butt completely destroyed this election. As Tom is about to explain here, it seems to me like the gangs in Chicago have done their research on them. Basically, what's happening here is that these people are, in fact, prepping for something to happen over the next 4 or 5 months. It could get very nasty.
The gang members, God bless them, have found something to get themselves straight. Some of them have been in prison, and they're all talking about building up their community and building a better tomorrow. This is the side of the gangs you're seeing. What you didn't see in this clip is where news people have been able to speak to some of the active gang members that have said that the Trendy are crazy. They say of gangs, they are willing to do 2 things further that you're not willing to do. And
this is like the MS-13 of Venezuela.
That's exactly correct.
Yep.
And the local gangs that are in prostitution, gambling, and cocaine is the big 3 with, and cocaine derivatives, crack and other things, street drugs and whatnot. That's what they traffic in. And they're saying that they are...
Now, I want you to think about something really quick. I'm going to play this very, very next clip, okay, because I haven't mentioned it yet. This very, very next clip is Patrick Bet-David explaining why it is this right here is, there's another problem here that people have not thought about that I'm about to mention. And of course, that problem is the people caught in the crossfire and the fact that they're not allowed to be armed in the city of Chicago. Let's roll this.
It's ranked by how strict their gun laws are, okay? Chicago, most of the time, top 3 homicide,
every weekend, drive-bys, mass
top
shootings.
10 cities in homicide in U.S. If I pull up that report, you would see
L.A. and Chicago and New York.
Highest murder rates in U.S. in 2024 by city. St. Louis is 1, Baltimore. Then you have New Orleans, Detroit, Cleveland, Vegas, Kansas City, Memphis, Newark, and then it's Chicago. So Chicago's in the top 10, but it's normally competing there all the time, right? If you want to go back to the chart I was showing you. So you would assume if things are so bad in the state of Illinois, maybe allow good citizens without background issues, felonies, misdemeanors, allow them to carry guns, like open carry. Yeah. So I can go around saying, hey, I know everybody's got a gun here. Look at the...
Okay, so let's run through this. You have an extremely weak mayor, a mayor that's actually more pro-immigrant. Number 2, you have a governor who's not very strong, who would be less inclined to send the National Guard in if an incident was to occur. Number 3, to go on top of that, you have an administration that, quite frankly, cannot afford to slip up right now because it's trying to get its VP elected. And number 4, the police department is stretched completely thin in Chicago. We haven't even gotten to other cities yet, which I'll mention here in the next block. You've got those 4 things, and number 5, people in the city of Chicago are not allowed to arm themselves. It seems to me like it's a complete total recipe for disaster. You guys may have heard Vinny talk about, are they trying to start a civil war here? I personally think that their plan is actually a little bit more blunt when you look at it. Okay, so let's back up for a quick second, because this right here is where it's going to be me mostly talking here rather than playing clips and reacting. Let's talk about this for a second, because there's actually 2 separate caveats here. Let's talk about caveat number 1. So let's just say you've got all these Venezuelan migrant gangs. You've got all these armed gangs. Now they're in Chicago. Then you've got an operation going on in New York. You got an operation eventually in Boston. Let's say you got an operation in San Francisco. You got one in L.A. By the way, the Venezuelan gangs are not going to get along with the Mexican gangs either. Then, of course, you've got the possibility of Portland. You got the possibility of Seattle. You got the possibility of, New Orleans. You got the possibility of maybe Minneapolis. You got all these sleeper cells everywhere. Do you think it's possible that maybe what they do want is they like a mini civil war to go on inside these cities? Do you think maybe it's possible that right there is what they want to happen? That's a strong possibility, or it could be what I've said before. It's also a big part of accelerating the replacement of a said race. This entire situation is one great big giant powder keg, so obviously Vinny at the very, very beginning of the video does in fact have a reason to be concerned. Of course, the left-wing media, they're going to deny it, as Vinny will obviously point out once again.
Remember Jim Acosta, he was like, Donald Trump, you're talking about these Venezuelan, this migrant, this caravan that's coming. And he goes, you keep calling it an invasion. Why do you keep saying it? He's like, because I think it is. And this is what you're getting. For gang members, think about it. Gang members in Chicago, one of the toughest, most dangerous places, are complaining that other gangs are coming in that aren't even supposed to be in the country. And he's right, Pat. That's going to get ugly. It's going to, because mind you, he's saying through the translation app that he's saying like all the stuff that they're doing with the drugs and the taking over apartments and doing this and doing that. It's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast.
Yeah. I mean, the mainstream media is in fact the enemy of the people. Wait a minute. I thought this entire situation was political. I thought it was about votes. It is, but not the way you think. Let's go back in time. Donald Trump leaves office in 2021. Shortly after he leaves office, they decide to start attacking his businesses. This court case after that court case, go after his money, sue him, destroy his reputation, try to make him broke, try to take away his money, try to bankrupt him. They then do the Mar-a-Lago raid. You got 1 indictment, 2 indictment, 3 indictment, 4 indictment. 1 indictment, of course, is an indictment that, quite frankly, everybody knew they were going to get a guilty verdict out of. It wasn't going to amount to anything. You got another indictment in Georgia that's been completely falling apart. You got another indictment, the documents case, which has been dismissed. Then, of course, you've got the January 6th indictment, which, of course, seems to have fallen apart because the Supreme Court came in and said he had partial immunity. Now, before I say any more, I'm going to play the other half of Tom's segment because of what he said at the very, very end. What he says, it's already occurred.
$500 million over 42,000 people is $1,000 a month, 12 grand over 2 years. So what are they doing? They brought them in here to bring votes to win. And this is me. This is BizDoc talking. Jeez. I believe they brought them in here to bring votes to win the election. But the consequence they're going to get is they're going to lose the country if we don't stop it.
Well, this is the reason that Trump is talking about it.
Have already lost the country. All you got to do is just look at the early vote returns that are going on. All right, so all you got to do is look at the early vote returns in these key states that Kamala Harris needs to win. She's even down in blue states as far as the vote, because you win the elections with turnouts, not polls. They have indicted Donald Trump. They have tried to assassinate him twice. It looks like he may have. Survived the third attempt. It looks like the FBI may have foiled that one. They can't stop him. So their plans of one-party rule and to get these people registered to vote, which I'll explain here in a second, it seems like this plan has failed. So what do? You destroy the country, you destroy everything, and then you try to pin it on the guy coming in, which is exactly what the Democrats do. These are the people that will come in, screw something up, completely tear it apart, put a Band-Aid over it, claim that they fixed it, and then blame you for their screw-up. That's how these people operate. Like, for example, their plan was to open up the border and let all these people in, and then eventually blunt the Republicans' effort in 2022. However, they didn't blunt the effort as bad as they thought it was going to blunt. It just so happened to be that Republicans were just as bad at screwing themselves over, but still at the same time, it didn't go either party's way. Come 2024, they're looking at losing at least 3 Senate seats, which is going to make legislation much, much harder to give these people amnesty. So therefore, they're no longer votes. They're just people who just kind of like sit here. Also, something else, too, if I didn't mention it before, Hispanics really are not that big of the voting electorate, even though they're a big part of the country's overall population percentage. But why in the world are they such a small part of the electorate? Well, because most Hispanics in the country are actually ineligible to vote. Yeah. They have legalization status, but not actual citizenship status. Like I said before, a lot of them are trying to get on the voter roll so they can vote. And a lot of them plan on voting Republican in the future because they see these migrants coming over, being given all kinds of benefits, basically hopping the line. It's pissed them off. The Democrats have already lost the country, so everything they're doing right now is to set the country up for its own destruction. Democrats have literally destroyed this nation, and this is how they plan to do it. all these groups are eventually going to be in every major city in the country. You see, their effort for voting is obviously, or effort to get votes, has kind of hit a bit of a snag. You see, you got to find a way to register all 21 million of these people, but you don't exactly have, how do I say, the logistical manpower or boots on the ground to do it. You got to register them to vote, then get them to the polls. Think about it this way right here. It's like trying to fit a square into a circular hole. It's just not going to work. Okay, it's like you got all these numbers over here, but you're trying to fit it through something very, very small. It's too big to go in. I know that it's probably going to make a bunch of people laugh. Yes, I do have enough self-awareness to know that there's a lot of connotations you guys can go with. But the fact of the matter is that the situation or the group that they're trying to register is a little bit too big. So you got to follow them in one by one. Well, that takes for freaking ever. Look at the situation with the Venezuelan gangs in Chicago. I've already said a lot of things could happen between late September and late January. God knows what the hell could happen. God knows what the hell could pop off. And these people from Venezuela don't care about American politics, at least in the sense that they don't care about the United States. But still, the point is this right here. Being able to register these people is a pretty lofty goal that these people are not going to be able to do, registering them for vote. So what do you do next? Well, you allow the Venezuelans to stay over here and you tell them to keep quiet. Of course, that's probably not going to happen because gangs right now are saber rattling. The goal, of course, would be to, after some time Donald Trump gets elected, the goal would be to destroy the country, destroy the cities, and go to war then, and then pin it on the orange man and say he's the one who's the problem. And, of course, there are enough stupid people in this country that it could, in fact, work. However, I don't think it will work, and quite frankly, it's pretty daggone flawed, which leads me to my last point, and that is that the plan is, in fact, flawed. I said in a previous video that this plan of one-party rule they have is going to run into a lot of problems. Like, for example, yes, it's true, all these Hispanics, if given the opportunity to vote in 2024, they will, in fact, vote Democrat. But, of course, they're probably not going to be able to vote because most of them are going to be ineligible, and you're not going to be able to register them all because you don't have the logistical power to do so. If they were to vote in 2028, if some of them were legalized or some of them can vote, then yes, some of them will probably still vote Democrat. But as the Democratic Party becomes more and more liberal, more and more woke, and more communistic, and more socialistic, the further and further and further right that it shifts, not to mention the fact that you're bringing in a lot of people who are Catholic, religious, and traditional. Basically, what I'm saying is that over time, the Democratic Party will not appeal to these people, and to go on top of that, the 2026 Senate map favors really neither party, and the 2028 Senate map, the Republicans would be in much better condition to run the table that cycle. Meaning that the deportations, the only thing you did was just accelerate or just bog down Republicans' efforts to deport some of these people. But of course, the deportations will in fact occur because they will have to be done to obviously sustain the nation. But that way there still leaves a remnant of people who, quite frankly, do have bad intentions. And you're obviously seeing this in Chicago. So Vinny's fears are, in fact, legitimate. And, of course, I do believe that that right there is their plan if this election, and, of course, if it goes south, I do believe that that right there is a part of their overall grand scheme. But you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comments. I'm going to try to have a second video out tomorrow. It's probably going to be the Jink Pierce reaction, but obviously I'm a little bit late on that one, and I obviously have the other one that I want to get out on Saturday or possibly Sunday. So, I mean, if a second video comes out, it's probably going to be at about 6 o'clock, but of course, it's probably going to be more reactionary in style. Either way, though, make sure you guys stick around through the weekend, and I'll see you guys later.